Jai. Ramacharya Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prams Gaur Sri Krishna Chaitanya. Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Tusi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. Shri Sri Radha Krishna Bhagavata Shama Kundara Kudi Kudi Govardhan Ki Jai. Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Navadhat Dham Ki Jai. Gang Shamona Tulsi Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. Samaveta Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. Go, Premanandi, all glories to some of the bodies, all glories to some of the bodies, all glories to some of the bodies, all glories to Sri Guru, Sri Guru, all glories to Sri Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Prachadane Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Chatarane Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasati Gaur Bhaktarinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10, Chapter 83, Verse 5. Shri Rishir Uvacha Ituttama Sloka Sikha Manijaneshu Abhistutvas Andaka Kaurvastriya Sametya Govinda Kata Mito Granans Triloka Gita Shranu Varnayami Te. Sri Risha Vacha, the great sage Sukadeva said, Iti thus Uttama Sloka, of great personalities who are glorified in choice poetry. Shikamani, the crest jewel, Janeshu, his devotees, Abhistuta Vatsu, while they were glorifying Andaka Kaurava, of the Andaka and Kaurava clans, Striya, the women, Sametya, meeting, Govinda Katha, topics of Lord Govinda, Metta, among one another, Agranan, spoke, three loka, in the worlds, Gita, sung, Srinu, please hear, Varnayami, I will describe, Te, to you. Translation, the great sage Sukadeva Goswami said, as Yudhisthira and the others were praising Lord Krishna, the crest jewel of all sublimely glorified personalities, the women of the Andaka and Kaurava clans met with one another and began discussing topics about Govinda that were sung throughout the three worlds. Please listen as I relate these to you. Sri Draupadi said, O Vaidarbi, Bhadra and Jambavati, O Kaushala, Satyabhama and Kalindi, O Saibya, Rohini, Lakshmana and other wives of Lord Krishna, please tell me how the Supreme Lord Achyuta, imitating the ways of this world by his mystic power, came to marry each of you. Purport, the Rohini addressed here by Draupadi is not Balaram's mother, but another Rohini, the foremost of the 16,000 princesses Lord Krishna rescued from the prison of Bhaumasura. Draupadi turns to her as the representative of all 16,000 and as a virtual equal to Krishna's 8 chief queens. Sri Rukmini said, when all the kings held their bows at the ready to assure that I would be presented to Shishupala, he who puts the dust of his feet on the heads of invincible warriors, took me from their midst, as a lion forcibly takes his prey from the midst of goats and sheep. May I always be allowed to worship those feet of Lord Krishna, the abode of Goddess Shri. Purport, Lord Krishna's pastimes of kidnapping Rukmini is narrated and detailed in chapters 52 to 54 of Srimad Bhagavatam's 10th canto. Sri Satyabhama said, my father, his heart tormented by his brother's death, accused Krishna of killing him. To remove the stain on his reputation, the Lord defeated the king of the bears and took back the Shamantaka jewel, which he then returned to my father. Fearing the consequences of his offense, my father offered me to the Lord, even though I had already been promised to others. Purport, as described in chapter 56 of this canto, King Satyajit had already compromised himself by promising his daughter's hand first to Akrura and then again to a number of other suitors. But after the return of the Shamantaka jewel, he felt impelled by his shame to offer to Lord Krishna instead. According to Sridhar Swami, the word prabhave, unto the Lord, answers any doubt about the propriety of offering Krishna a bride who had already been promised to others. It is perfectly proper to offer him everything one owns and improper to withhold anything from him. Sri Jambavati said, unaware that Lord Krishna was none other than his own master and worshipable deity, the husband of Goddess Sita. My father fought with him for 27 days. When my father finally came to his senses and recognized the Lord, he took hold of his feet and presented him with both me and the Shamantaka jewel as tokens of his reverence. I am simply the Lord's maidservant. Purport, Jambavan has been had been Lord Ramchandra's servant many thousands of years before. Srila Vishnu Chakravarti mentions that while hearing Jambavati's story, the women present recognized her as the girl whom Jambavan had once offered to Lord Sri Rama to be his wife. Since Lord Rama had taken a vow to have only one wife, he could not accept her then, but did so when he returned in the Dwapara Yuga as Krishna. The other queens wanted to honor Jambavati for this, but she replied humbly, "I am just the Lord's maidservant." How Jambavati and Satyabhama became Lord Krishna's wives is told in the 56th chapter of the 10th canto. Sri Kalindi said, "The Lord knew I was performing severe austerities and penances with the hope of one day touching his lotus feet. So he came to me in the company of his friend and took my hand in marriage. Now I am engaged as the sweeper in his palace." Mitravinda said, "At my Swayamvar ceremony he came forward, defeating all the kings present, including my brothers who dared insult him, and took me away just as a lion removes his prey from amidst a pack of dogs. Thus Lord Krishna, the shelter of the goddess of fortune, brought me to his capital city. May I be allowed to serve him by washing his feet life after life." Sri Satya said, "My father arranged for 7 extremely powerful and vigorous bulls with deadly sharp horns to test the prowess of the kings who desired my hand in marriage. Although these bulls destroyed the false pride of many heroes, Lord Krishna subdued them effortlessly, tying them up in the same way that children playfully tie up a goat's kids. He thus purchased me with his valor. Then he took me away with my maidservants and a full army of 4 divisions, defeating all the kings who opposed him along the road. May I be granted the privilege of serving that Lord." Sri Bhadra said, "My dear Draupadi, of his own free will my father invited his nephew Krishna, to whom I had already dedicated my heart, and offered me to him as his bride. My father presented me to the Lord with an Akshohini military guard and a retinue of my female companions. My ultimate perfection is this, to always be allowed to touch Lord Krishna's lotus feet as I wander from life to life, bound by my karma." Purport: with the word Atmana, Queen Bhadra speaks not only for herself, but all living entities as well. The soul's perfection is devotional service to Lord Krishna, but in this world and beyond, in liberation. Srila Jiva Goswami comments that although in civilized society it is normally considered disrespectful to publicly speak the name of one's guru or husband, Lord Krishna's name is unique. The mere utterance of the name Krishna is commendable as the highest expression of reverence for God, as the Svetasvatara Upanishad states, "Yasya nama mahad yasaha." The holy name of the Lord is supremely glorious. Sri Lakshmana said, "O Queen, I repeatedly heard Narada Muni glorify the appearance and activities of Achyuta, and thus my heart also became attached to that Lord Mukunda. Indeed, even goddess Padmahasta chose him as her husband after careful consideration, rejecting the great demigods who rule various planets. My father Brihatsena was by nature compassionate to his daughter, and knowing how I felt, O saintly lady, he arranged to fulfill my desire. Just as a fish was used as a target in your Swayamvar ceremony, O Queen, to assure that you would attain Arjuna as your husband, so fish was also used in my ceremony. In my case, however, it was concealed on all sides, and only its reflection could be seen in a pot of water below." Purport: Arjuna is famous as the most expert bowman. Why then could he not hit the fish target at Srimati Lakshmana's Swayamvar ceremony, just as he had once done to win Draupadi? Srila Sridhar Swami explains, the target at Draupadi's Swayamvar had been covered only partially, so that a marksman could see it if he looked straight up the pillar on which it was placed. To shoot Lakshmana's target, however, it was necessary to aim by looking up and down at the same time, an impossible feat for any mortal. Therefore, only Krishna could strike the target. Hearing of this, thousands of kings, expert in shooting arrows and wielding other weapons, converged from all directions to my father's city, accompanied by the military teachers. My father properly honored each king according to his strength and seniority. Then those whose minds were fixed on me took up the bow and arrow, and one by one tried to pierce the target in the midst of the assembly. According to the acharyas, only those kings who were extremely intent on winning the hand of the princess even dared to try to shoot the target. Some of them picked up the bow but could not string it, and some of them threw it aside in frustration. Some managed to pull the bowstring towards the tip of the bow, only to have the bow spring back and knock them to the ground. A few heroes, namely Jarasandha, Shishupala, Bhima, Duryodhana, Karna, and the king of Ambasta, succeeded in stringing the bow, but none of them could find the target. Purport: these kings were very strong physically, but they were not skillful enough to find the target. Then Arjuna looked at the reflection of the fish in the water and determined its position. When he carefully shot his arrow at it, however, he did not pierce the target, but merely grazed it. According to the explanation of Sridhar Swami, Arjuna was more expert a marksman than the other kings, but his physical strength was not adequate to the task of shooting it with perfect accuracy. After all the arrogant kings had given up, their pride broken, the Supreme Personality of God had picked up the bow, easily strung it, and then fixed his arrows upon it. As the sun stood still in the constellation Abhijit, he looked at the fish in the water only once, and then pierced it with the arrow, knocking it to the ground. Each day the sun passes once through the lunar constellation Abhijit, marking the period most auspicious for victory. As pointed out by Srila Vishnu Chakravarti, on this particular day, the Muhurta of Abhijit coincided with high noon, further emphasizing Lord Krishna's greatness by making the target all the more difficult to see. Kettle drums resounded in the sky and on the earth. People shouted, "Jai, Jai." Overjoyed demigods showered flowers. Just then I walked onto the ceremonial ground, the ankle bells on my feet gently tinkling. I was wearing new garments of the finest silk tied with a belt, and I carried a brilliant necklace fashioned of gold and jewels. There was a shy smile on my face and a wreath of flowers in my hair. Purport: Srila Sridhar Swami states that Sri Lakshmana was so excited by remembering how she obtained the Supreme Lord that she forgot her natural shyness and went on to describe her own triumph. I lifted my face, which was encircled by my abundant locks, and effulgence from the glow of my earrings reflected on my cheeks. Smiling coolly, I glanced about. Then, looking around at all the kings, I slowly placed the necklace on the shoulder of Murari, who had captured my heart. Just then there were loud sounds of conch shells and mridanga, pataha, bheri, and anaka drums, as well as other instruments. Men and women began to dance, and singers began to sing. The leading kings there could not tolerate my having chosen the Supreme Personality of Godhead, O Draupadi. Burning with lust, they became quarrelsome. Srila Sridhar Swami comments that the contamination of lust led the kings to quarrel foolishly with the Lord, even after his seeing his supreme power. The Lord then placed me on his chariot, drawn by 4 most excellent horses. Donning his armor and readying his bow, Saranga, he stood on the chariot, and there on the battleground he manifested 4 arms. With 2 of his arms, according to Srila Vishnu Chakravarti, the Lord embraced his bride, and with the other 2 he held his bow and arrows. Now Daruka drove the Lord's gold-trimmed chariot as the kings looked on, O Queen, like small animals helplessly watching a line. The kings pursued the Lord like village dogs chasing a lion. Some kings, raising their bows, stationed themselves on the road to stop him as he passed by. These warriors were deluged by arrows shot from the Lord's bow, Saranga, Some of the kings fell on the battlefield with severed arms, legs, and necks. The rest gave up the fight and fled. The Lord of the Yadus then entered his capital city, Kushastali, or Dwarka, which is glorified in heaven and on earth. The city was elaborately decorated with flagpoles carrying banners that blocked the sun, and also with splendid archways. As Lord Krishna entered, he appeared like the sun god entering his abode. And the abode of the sun is in the western mountains, where he sets each evening. My father honored his friends, family, and in-laws with priceless clothing and jewelry, and with royal beds, thrones, and other furnishing. With devotion he presented the perfectly complete Lord with a number of maidservants bedecked with precious ornaments. Accompanying these maidservants were guards walking on foot, and others riding elephants, chariots, and horses. He also gave the Lord extremely valuable weapons. The Supreme Lord is Purna, perfect and complete in himself. He requires nothing for his satisfaction. Knowing this, a pure devotee makes offerings to the Lord only out of love, bhaktita, with no expectation of material profit. And on his part, the Lord happily accepts even a small gift of flowers, tulsi leaves, and water when it is offered in love. Thus, by renouncing all material association and practicing austere penances, we queens have all become personal maidservants of the self-satisfied Supreme Lord. Wherefore, in the opinion of Srila Vishnu Chakravarti, Srimati Lakshmana became embarrassed when she realized that he had been talking about herself, and so she spoke this verse praising her co-wives. In her humility, Lakshmana claimed that Krishna's queens, unlike ordinary wives, could not bring their husband under control, and thus they could relate to him only as servile housekeepers. In fact, however, since the Lord's queens are direct expansions of his internal potency, they fully controlled him with their love. So here we have a series of the descriptions of the queens and how they married Krishna. And in detail, Lakshmana has described her particular marriage to Krishna, which highlights Krishna's great strength and also his skill. And of course, after the test of piercing the fish, then he showed his prowess by defeating all the different kings who dared to try to oppose him. And thus the Lord returned to Dwarka, where he was welcomed very nicely and lived happily with Lakshmana and all the other queens. So in these different descriptions, we see that the queens are all saying that I just want to be the maidservant or sweep the floor, etc. So they take a very humble position in spite of the fact that they are the queens of Krishna. So though they are in Dwarka, and the gopis in Vrindavan are famous for their Madhurya Rasa, we'll find a description of the queens having very exalted love as well. And their love is so intense that even when the Lord is present, sometimes they feel he is separate, he's not there, due to their ecstatic symptoms. So they also have a very high intensity of their love. It doesn't go as high as that of the gopis, but nevertheless it's quite intense. So though they may speak of themselves as low servants, etc., we should not think that their love is so muted or weak. They actually do have Madhurya Rasa, and it's quite intense. So, of course, an aspect of intensity of rasa is that even though it may be high and elevated, the devotees who experience that particular relationship with the Lord never feel proud. And in fact, the higher they are, the lower they feel. So it's also natural, therefore, that the queens who are on a very exalted level would feel that they're only sweepers of the floor or maidservants, etc. So the more intense the relationship is, the more humility one feels. This indicates that this feeling of humility or dainya is also inherent in the whole process of bhakti. And it becomes more and more apparent as the intensity of the rasa increases. And therefore, the gopis, who are the highest of all, they are considered to have the most humility as well. So they consider themselves the most fallen, even though they're the most exalted. So then, as an expression of that humility, they will make statements like, I'm only the maidservant, or I only sweep the floors of the palace, etc. From this we learn that if most exalted devotees have such a humble position, then those who are beginning bhakti should also have a great humility in their approach to the Supreme Lord. Of course, it may not be expressed so well and so intensely as the elevated gopis or the queens of Dwarka, but nevertheless, if there is no humility manifested in the devotee in sadhana, then there's something wrong with the way they are practicing the bhakti, since it is inherent in the process. So thus we see, and when Lord Chaitanya, he explains this process of bhakti and chanting the holy name, and then he says that one has to feel lower than the straw in the street, more tolerant than a tree, and giving all respects to others. So this perfectly expresses this idea from the very beginning of bhakti, that there has to be humility. So this is not the humility of the material world, which we can say is a sattvic quality. For instance, the brahmana or someone in sattva gun is very humble and doesn't show pride, etc. So that's a material quality. So this is a spiritual quality. It's not coming from sattva gun. It arises from the Atma and the Atma's relationship with the Lord. Automatically, because we are small particle, anu, etc., in our relationship with the Lord, and the Lord is full of 64 wonderful qualities. We can only get a little bit of those qualities. Therefore, automatically the jiva feels himself in a much lesser position. So we're taught in the beginning of bhakti that Supreme Lord is Ishvara. He's full of all potencies and powers. He's eternal, special position, and the jiva is a small particle like the ray of the sun, and he's not independent. He's Nitya Krishna Das, and he can make mistakes, etc. So we understand from the beginning of bhakti that jiva is quite different from Supreme Lord, that we are quite different, so we can never become the Lord. So we say we're eternal servant of the Lord. Whether we accept it or not, we are dependent on the Supreme Lord in all cases. So naturally there has to be some humility in that relation, and therefore we say we serve the Lord. Krishna Das, I am the servant of the Lord. So that is inherent in faith and in the beginning of the process of bhakti. If we don't accept that, we can't even do bhakti. If we think we're equal to the Lord, why we serve Him? So when we begin the process of bhakti, we have to accept the Lord is the object of our service. Yeah? Identity as a servant, of course, is a particular rasa as well. We call it dasya rasa, where we think of ourselves as a menial servant and Supreme Lord, He is the master. And this is very prominent in Vaikuntha. In fact, it is the main rasa manifested there, for the jivas at least. So there, that idea of dasya becomes emphasized to a high degree. With Krishna, however, then even though we're all eternal servants of Krishna, we're all dasas in one sense. Because of the varying relationships, that idea of being Krishna dasa gets hidden. And therefore, in Vatsalya rasa, the parents think of themselves as superior to the Lord, not the servant of the Lord, but rather Krishna serving them. Krishna's inferior child, and they're the master. So in one sense, it's opposite relationship. So that's Vatsalya rasa. And in Sakya rasa then, it's equal. Not inferior, not superior. Equal. So therefore we got a variety of positions in relation to the Lord. That doesn't mean, of course, that they're still that they're not Nitya Krishna Das. Yes, they are. But due to their particular bhava, then that becomes hidden. And they're thinking of themselves, I am the parent of Krishna, or I'm the friend of Krishna, I'm the lover of Krishna, etc. Some devotees think of themselves as the servant of Krishna. So Krishna has servants. So in Dwarka, he has a lot of servants. And in Vrindavan also, he has some servants as well. So they serve Krishna in that dasya type of relationship. But for these other relationships, that becomes somewhat hidden by the fact that they are relating to Krishna on different levels due to the rasa that they have. But never do they feel really independent of Krishna. So even though the parents are like superior and Krishna's inferior, Mother Yasoda and Nanda Maharaj are in a superior position. In another sense, Krishna is the, let's say, the source of their life. So everybody in Vrindavan also is attracted to Krishna and wants to please Krishna. But it's expressed in various ways. So the parents want to serve him in one particular way, and their bhava, of course, is that they're superior to Krishna and have to do things for Krishna. But nevertheless, they all understand it. They feel their complete dependence on Krishna out of love, that he is the object of their love. So the relationship is always Nitya Krishna Das, it is eternal. But according to the various rasas, then the various other identities arise, and then they tend to cover up that feeling. Whereas in Vaikuntha, that becomes very prominent. And it's the common rasa there, dasya rasa. So here we have the queens expressing that we want to be the maid servant, like that. So they're expressing their humility. And in fact, we can say that within the Madhurya rasa, various rasas can manifest. So we can have dasya rasa or sakya rasa manifesting. Vatsalya rasa cannot manifest. This is contrary, very contrary to Madhurya rasa. But definitely dasya and sakya can manifest to some degree. There's some sort of intimacy of equality there in sneha, etc. and dasya and prema. Shantarasa also is not so conducive, because Shantarasa means too calm. No, not much emotion involved there. It's very neutral. Whereas Madhurya Rasa is quite passionate. So therefore it's also not we don't see it appearing. And if it does, it's called rasabhas, but other ones can temporarily manifest within them on certain occasions. So in any case, all the queens are expressing their great attachment to Krishna and appreciating Krishna's wonderful qualities and how he responds to each of the queens individually and satisfies them completely.
As we see here, these queens, and they are identifying themselves like one sweeper, servant, something like that. In our day-to-day life, we will sometimes see in a temple we have a many department. There is a department in church, there is a temple president. Many things are there. How to identify oneself in regard to this service? How to identify oneself? Like do we have if one said I am the in charge of this, I'm in charge, I'm HOD, means sometime out of pride, say everything should happen according to me. Everything should happen according to me. Sometimes it happen out of pride, might say, So how to handle this? How to think oneself in this regard?
Well, since we're doing sadhana bhakti temporarily or at certain occasions, we may be overcome by material emotions, material concepts, etc. But as part of sadhana, when we're doing the sadhana, and then inherent in that sadhana is this idea that Krishna is the controller, and we simply accept whatever comes as his desire. So we take everything as the arrangement of the Supreme Lord. And we have a very submissive attitude towards what happens, understanding the Lord has his own particular arrangements. And we see that expressed also by the associates of the Lord. They also cannot understand how the Lord is operating. So Kunti may express herself in that way. She doesn't know what's happening, why all these events, the Kurukshetra war and all the afflictions to the Pandavas, etc. She doesn't understand why it's happening. But she also understands, yes, somehow no one can understand the mind of Krishna, so we have to accept whatever his plan is. So that is necessary also in the devotee's mind. He has to simply accept at a certain point. That doesn't mean that he makes no efforts to do anything. Well, definitely he has to make efforts in devotional service. But along with that, there is humility and tolerance and respect for all of the entities, etc. It has to be there as well. And when there isn't, then it means materialism is manifesting.
How to understand this? Sometimes we take the role of like a controller.
Well, that means again that we understand that this is an aspect of passion. Like the Kshatriyas tries to be Ishvara. He's Ishvara Bhav manifesting in a Kshatriya. And that's material. It's material. Now, of course, so we find that Krishna is also Kshatriya here, and Pandavas are Kshatriyas also. But that's different. That's for Leela only. It's not motivated by the mode of passion in the material world at all. So everything is the Lord's expression and the devotee's expression is all related to their relationship with the Lord, their service to the Lord. That's all. It may express itself in different ways. But when we're doing sadhana bhakti, then we have to understand that the absolute controller is Krishna, not us. And if we forget that, then we fall into problems. And we get false expectations, and then we get disappointments as a result of that. So then we end up morose, or we get lack of faith.
See here, the queens, although they are the Krishna's wife, but they are not identifying themselves as the Krishna's wife. It's very interesting. They said the sweeper taken very low position.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we'll see other descriptions as well of the queens as they're quite different, in which they're experiencing separation or whatever like that. So it's quite different. Here, probably also because they are speaking publicly, it's a little bit different. But then when they're in their own palace with Krishna, quite different, the relationship.
But the humility in the spiritual world is that different from that of the material world. However, for a sadhaka, the spiritual humility is, develops as we do unalloyed devotion.
Well, the humility of the devotee, that's related to the spiritual humility in the spiritual world. But then we have humility manifested in material world as well, as part of sattva gun, for instance, as opposed to rajagun, in which there's no humility. So that's material humility. But we're trying to cultivate a relationship with the Lord in humility. So that is spiritual, not material. It's in relation to the Supreme Lord. So everything is related with the Lord, it becomes spiritual. If it's not related with the Lord, then it is material.
But we also see the gopis are very passionate about Krishna. This passion is a spiritual passion, right?
Yeah, it is prema.
Oh, that's compassion.
Yeah. It is not rajagun.
But again,
They also have anger, but it is not tamagun either. It is man, which is very elevated. It's, very elevated after prema.
Maharaj also mentioning about Madhurya Ras, including all other rasas. Is it that, Maharaj, possibly that when Krishna is given food, prasadam and all that, that's Madhurya Rasa includes the Vatsalya Rasa in that sense?
What's
they
that?
feed Krishna. The gopis do feed Krishna, the queens feed Krishna, the Madhurya Ras. Feeding Krishna. So does it have an impact of the Vatsalya Ras? Because they are feeding Krishna.
No. We can say that all the Madhurya Rasa includes all the other rasas, not in the sense of those particular relationships, but the intensities are there. So it's explained that dasya generally goes up to prema, and sakya may go up to sneha, and vatsalya rasa goes up to raga, and then Madhurya Rasa goes up to Anuraga, which the queens of Dwarka experience, and then Mahabhava, which some of the gopis experience. So therefore the gopis include all these levels of bhava, prema, sneha, raga, anuraga, and Mahabhava, which are different levels for different types of rasas. So the gopis include all that. But some rasas are contrary, so they cannot have Vatsalya Rasa within Madhurya Rasa.
But again, we see the amazing humility of the queens of Dwaraka. At the same time, we also know being the servant of the servant is the highest. Is there a display of they being doing the mood of servant of the servant than serving Krishna?
Is there?
Servant of the servant. They are very much attached to serving Krishna in a very menial way, the queens of Dwaraka.
Yeah.
But being the servant of the servant is the highest in spiritual world. Is there a...
Well, we can say that ultimately everybody in the spiritual world understands they're servant of the servant of the servant, because they all express dainya. They're the most worthless. So therefore the gopis feel we are the most fallen, we are the worst. We are the most indirect servants of the Lord, etc. So it's natural. They not think I'm the highest person, I'm the highest servant, etc. They feel the opposite.
Is there a difference in the humility of the gopis and that of the queens of Dwaraka?
Any difference?
Is there a difference in terms of humility? Is there anything to understand between the humility of the gopis and the humility of the Dwaraka?
Well, the difference is not in the humility, the difference is in the Madhurya Rasa itself, where one is Parakya, the other is Svakya. And the mood of the Vrindavan is sweet, whereas that in Dwarka is filled with Aishwarya.
Hare Krishna. Maharaj, Sakya Rasa, they feel they are equal. And when they feel they're equal, how humility also can be there simultaneously. So you feel equal, but you feel less. So how that can happen?
Well, they're equal in one sense, in that they play with Krishna and they joke with Krishna, etc. In that sense, there's equality. And of course, they may even fight with Krishna. Of course, it is mock fighting with Krishna or mock arguing with Krishna, etc. But again, it is all based upon great affection for the Supreme Lord Krishna, their great affection for him. Therefore, that's where we can say the humility is expressed, because they feel dependent on Krishna completely. And if Krishna disappears, then they feel completely helpless. So the relationship in that sense is not exactly equal, because they're completely dependent on Krishna.
Yeah, Maharaj, one more question. Sakya is at the level of equal. Madhurya, what is Sakya, they think they are equal. Vatsalya, they think they are superior. Madhurya, how do they feel?
There's a feeling of equality there, because they also have the sneha, etc. So there's a feeling of equality there. And sometimes there's a feeling of superiority, not like a parent, but they want to control Krishna.
Sometimes the devotees are offered gifts. They may not feel like taking the gift, but those gifts can be offered to Krishna. The person who is giving it as a gift to some devotee. The devotee may not be feeling that he should take the gift. Those things can be offered to Krishna directly.
Well, if he doesn't use them himself, he can.
Maharaj, humility, what is the characteristic, how does it manifest? What is the characteristic of humility? Like
we can say lack of pride. We don't feel that we are qualified. We don't long for worship and position. We accept whatever Krishna gives. We don't demand anything.
In the instance of taking gifts, the person who is gifting it is giving in already in the mood of for the utility of the devotee. So that doesn't mean that it is already contaminated.
No, only if the devotee uses it. In other words, somebody gives you fruit and you eat it, then you can't offer it to the Lord. Somebody gives you fruit, then you give it to the Lord, no problem.
Maharaj, one more question. So let's say you are in a position, and that position you need to demand something as part of that position. You are basically looking after something. You have to demand. So you mentioned that demanding is not real humility. So let's say you are in charge, you are controlling something, you are a manager somewhere, or you are doing some activity. So you have to demand, but demanding is not humility. So
this is in the material world. You're talking about material world, or you're talking about devotees?
In service also, in devotional service.
So, of course, if we're in a managerial position, we can say things, but our attitude should not demand, order people from the idea that I'm all powerful and you're nothing. So we have to give respect to devotees also. Nevertheless, as a manager, then we expect that in their particular position, then they should fulfill those orders.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare
To get the Kindle edition of the book, we can visit Amazon website for your country and sign in with your account. We can search the book by typing the title of the book or type H.H. Bhanuswamy in the search bar to get the complete list of Maharaj's publications. By clicking H.H. Bhanuswamy, we can see the entire library. Let's select a book, say Gopal Champu. On the right hand side, we will find a drop down box with the title Deliver to. Click on it to select your device. Click Buy Now and proceed with your login details and complete the payment process. Some of the books are free with Kindle Unlimited. We can get them by clicking here. To get the paperback edition, please click here. To get Kindle app, please visit the Google Play Store and install it. Open the Kindle app. Click on Start Reading. And then let's get started. If the search box is not there, click Next till you find the search box. We can search the book by typing title of book or type H.H. Bhanuswamy in the search bar to get the complete list of Maharaj's publications. By clicking on See More, we can get the entire library. Select the book. You can also check the sample by clicking here. Buy now and enjoy reading. We finally proceed to the payment option. Hare